Vera Walters-Morrison has never once doubted she was British.
And we're not even immigrants, because this is my mother's British passport. Okay? They were born British.
Her message was simple. We were not immigrants, she told her congregation during last weekend's Windrush Day celebrations. Theresa May's hostile environment has left deep scars, even in church. I've seen extracts from a draft report of the review commissioned by the Home Secretary into the Windrush scandal. They expose a government department and ministers as reckless and of failing in the legal duty to counter racial discrimination. It's written by Wendy Williams, brought in from the Police Inspectorate to head this independent review into what went wrong and why. She's interviewed numerous ministers and Home Office officials. Whilst everyone I spoke to, she writes, was rightly appalled by what happened, this was often juxtaposed with a self-justification, either in the form of it was unforeseen, unforeseeable and therefore unavoidable, or a failure on the part of individuals to prove their status. In other words, as far as the Windrush generations are concerned, there are views in the Home Office that it was their own fault. But Wendy Williams turns on the department, blaming a negative culture which she says defends, deflects and dismisses criticism and seeks to shut down critical stories rather than resolve problems.
The problems in the immigration system and within the Home Office go all the way to the top. And that's right at the ministerial level where decisions are taken. Decisions are taken to ignore evidence, to politicise that process of making policy, and really not to come clean with the public about the risks associated with the policy decisions that they're taking.
The review has focused on the impact of Theresa May's immigration laws in 2014 and 2016 that brought in measures to beef up her hostile environment. 6 years ago, her message was solely aimed at the growing clamour to get tougher on immigration.
And this is not just about making the UK a more hostile place for illegal migrants, it is also about fairness.
But draft extracts say the implementation was flawed because it failed to adequately consider the past, and it failed to adequately consider the impact on people, and it also failed to adequately mitigate equality issues, including the potential for discrimination, particularly in housing. That's a reference to the right to rent scheme, where landlords are compelled to check the immigration status of potential tenants. The High Court declared the scheme unlawful in March, ruling it was discriminatory. The successful challenge was brought by the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants. The Home Office is appealing, but it's suggested in one draft extract that the scheme should be suspended until the case is heard.
What you've got, instead of a government saying, well, actually, we should probably rethink some of these measures, they're doubling down. They're defending the right of the government to create an incentive to racially discriminate. The costs, the consequences of these decisions, which fall predominantly on people of colour, the black community in particular during the Windrush crisis, those consequences and those costs are deemed to be acceptable. And that is a slightly more insidious but far more dangerous form of racism, in my opinion.
By any measure, these extracts we've seen in draft form are damning. Damning of a culture, damning of an attitude, and damning of a denial of responsibility for the scandal. There have been ministerial expressions of regret. An embarrassed Theresa May apologised when confronted by Caribbean leaders.
And I want to apologise to you today.
Amber Rudd said sorry before being forced to resign as Home Secretary.
Some of the way they have been treated has been wrong, has been appalling, and I am sorry.
And her successor, Sajid Javid, has apologised countless times in letters to those wrongly removed. Yet one extract from the report states, Ministers/Department should admit that it was wrong and provide an unqualified apology. The sincerity of this apology will be judged by how far the department demonstrates contrition. Many believe the Windrush scandal has its roots going back decades. But from the extracts I've seen of the draft review, it's the casualty of a culture which went all the way up to ministerial level.
They're all full of hope for the future, so let's make them very welcome.
By failing to listen and consider the significant warnings that hostile environment measures were likely to result in, and in certain cases potentially encourage discrimination based on race, I found the department failed to adhere to its public sector equality duty. I mean, how serious is it if the government, the Home Office, ministers have failed in their legal duty to ensure equality?
Government ministers have not just failed in their duty to ensure equality, they're doubling down. They are defending their right to create the incentive to discriminate, as we've seen with their defence of the right to rent scheme. It's very worrying in 2019 if we're seeing that at the heart of government. And again, it's possible for things to change. We just need leaders who have the courage to say that things have to change.
It won't be just courage, though. Changing the negative culture of a Whitehall department is a huge challenge. The draft review contains numerous recommendations, including this astonishing suggestion that all staff need educating in their own country's past. The Home Office should ensure that all its existing staff and new staff learn about the history of the UK and its relationship with the rest of the world, including Britain's colonial history.
It's really shocking that in 2019, government officials at the Home Office need to be taught why people are here in the UK. The fact is, immigration is not a new phenomenon. People have always moved. Britain has a history of engagement with the rest of the world. It ruled 1/4 of the world's people. Many of us are here because our parents were ruled by the British. The fact that officials at the Home Office need to be taught this is quite frankly shocking.
Tell that to this church congregation in northwest London. Restoring their trust in government will take more than history lessons.
I feel like they've used and abused us. They've used us, they've got what they want, and then they cast us out like old shoes. That is how I feel deep down inside. This plaque is unveiled to the glory of God.
The draft extracts of the review which we have shown are only drafts. The final report, due later this year, may read differently. But it's going to take much longer to convince these wounded Windrush generations that time will heal.
Simon Israel reporting, and the Home Office has said in a statement that it does not respond to leaked documents.